In a world where content is limitless, two dudes forge an unbreakable bond to become a part of something larger than themselves by creating a podcast unlike nothing the world has ever heard. Time is running out, and all hope will soon be lost. Their content could hold the key to fight against the darkness. No matter how many podcasts the people have listened to, they haven't heard us. Not us united. Dude, we started this podcast knowing Dune was coming out.
Yeah.
And I think I've mentioned it. This is
week.
episode 19. I bet if we were to go back at least 15 episodes, I've probably mentioned Dune.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Well, that time has finally arrived, my guy. And the spice has never flowed so hard in its life. I'm so excited to be talking about the 2021. Should have been 2020, but hey.
We take what we get.
Yeah, we take that L, and it was totally worth the wait. We're excited. The 2021 version of Dune by our boy Denis. We love our boy Denis.
Yes, sir.
Before we even started this podcast, you and I did some practice runs, and we talked about mostly his movies because we both just agreed that they're phenomenal. And without getting into spoilers about this movie, I think we can say that our boy delivered.
He delivered a movie.
He delivered a big old load of spice. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Nice.
Well,
it's almost like I'm almost like experiencing kind of like some sadness because like
yeah,
it's now over.
it's a post-Dune world now.
It is.
Like not like it's what's next because there's a billion movies next, but like literally every pretty much since I've met you, since I've known Nicholas, it's like Dune.
Yeah.
It's always like Dune.
Yeah, which is weird because like as a Marvel guy, as a just movie guy, there hasn't really been one that's outside of most of the fandoms that are like
Endgame, whatever.
Yeah. That I'm like looking forward to. But I was like, you know what? Maybe this will be the one.
Mm-hmm.
And I questioned it and was like, you know what? This is the first time I'm actually going to like try to dive into the universe a little bit before a movie gets made because I do know the way Denis likes to tell his stories, and I know he won't spoon feed you. I know his movies are going to throw you into a really cool world that he's going to create, but I just felt like I needed to maybe have a little bit extra knowledge.
Yeah.
And so I kind of wanted to know the ins and outs because I thought it would enhance my enjoyment of the film. And I know you were like, I just want to go in
Completely blind.
Yeah. And the beautiful part about that was I felt like we both were able to enjoy it
No matter what.
regardless.
Yeah.
Like he did it well enough that those not
Familiar
getting
with
to
the source
have
material.
it, not familiar, were able to enjoy it. And I think there's probably some questions that you had.
Oh, yeah.
And we can talk about that and what compares to the books and whatnot. But I do think, like, overall, it delivered a overall commercial, like, if you're just going in, I think this does a good enough job for you. But there's definitely, it's a complex book, and it's a complex story. And we're not saying that in, like, a self-righteous sort of way. It's just, like, it's a dense book.
Well, it's 21 hours on audio,
Yeah.
about 1,000-page book, condensed into a 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah, and they don't even really get through the full length. That was a creative choice this movie made, and it gets roughly about 2/3 of the way through the novel. A little over half, maybe not quite 2/3, which is really cool. So
what you're saying is there's no call that we can't answer. There's no
right.
Oscar Isaac that we won't put into a movie.
Amen. Not us united accepts any call
That's right.
sent to us.
That's
That's
right.
right. Yeah. What just a banger line by our boy Duke Leto.
Let's just say I knew 3 things going into this movie.
Yes.
I knew that there were sandworms.
Yes.
I knew that people were going to fight like demons.
Yep.
and I knew that House Atreides accepts.
And that's pretty much all the trailer could tell you, because if it told you any more, it would be like, what is this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's get into just like spoiler-free stuff for now.
Yeah.
Kind of like overall
We're
thoughts.
talking about Dune, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Did we not say that? Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. This is like, I'm just like, so.
It's a surreal moment right now.
Yeah, like, I just like, to grasp the concept of, Nick has been, I would do a shout out to Nick. Nick has been so gracious in that I have wanted to know nothing about this universe whatsoever. And he has been just chomping at the bits to wanting to discuss anything about this movie.
Yeah.
Anything about this universe.
Yeah.
And I have asked politely that I wouldn't, he saw it before me. He saw it a few days before me. And I asked him, please do not say what you think, anything about the movie. And
yeah.
I honestly could see it a little killing him inside. But now the floodgates are open. Now the spice is flowing.
It's great. Yeah, no, I watched it twice before seeing it with you. I've seen it 3 times in the last 5 days.
Yes, sir.
No regrets. Just as enjoyable every single time. I had a different experience each time watching it.
Yeah.
Watching on an HBO Max really helped with the dialogue of the movie. Watching it in theaters helped hell a bunch for like
scope,
getting you into the like atmosphere.
Yeah.
But some of the songs and like music were definitely louder and ticked up a little bit more over the dialogue. And so like there was like I just kind of had different experiences.
Yeah, the sound mixing of it. Yeah.
And so I went and saw it on DLX screen first time, dream loungers, heated seats,
yes, sir.
Reclined all the way, just soaking it in.
The seats are heated?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Let's go. Second time HBO Max in the comfort of my own bedroom. And then third in pretty much like what I would say is like the most
theater.
Average theater experience.
Yeah.
And so
except your boy was there.
Except you were there. With the spice flowing. Yeah. No, I am very excited because this is a fictional story that I'm in. Like,
yeah,
I have always felt like I'm the mediocre Star Wars fan. I know enough to dabble, but I'm not the guy who's interested enough to know where Greedo comes from. I've always enjoyed Lord of the Rings. And there's nothing wrong with Lord of the Rings, but I've also never been like, I really need to know why the riders of Rohan are like important.
Right.
Like, I'm just like, those guys are dope. Like, I'll watch those movies because they're dope. But I don't need to know the stuff. This story, and maybe it's because I just kind of like was chomping at the bit to read the book. Now that I know the stuff and know the intricacies of all that, I am interested. I want to know why. And I want to know why. And it makes me just go, oh, this character's important, even though he's only going to do this. And this character is important because and I can like do that. And so like I kind of found like the fandom or like the story that I kind of want to like dive deep on in this movie. Yep.
I'm sorry. We're watching this movie also while we're talking about the podcast. And he just said House Atreides accepts. So we're at that part of the movie. If anyone wants to follow along.
Atreides.
So, yeah, technically this is Nick's 4th viewing of the movie.
Correct.
So, man, this movie is insane.
Yeah. As a man who knows little about Dune except for just the movie, what are your thoughts? And I know you're a Denis
I'm a Denis fanboy.
Denis
so let's
Villeneuve.
just say Arrival is one of my favorite movies. I love Blade Runner 2049, Sicario. Enemy is a solid hit.
Don't forget about the best one,
Prisoners.
You like Prisoners?
I do like Prisoners.
Prisoners
but
is
it's
a
not
great film.
It's not.
Yeah,
it's
not your favorite.
Like, we have a feud of that. Like I like Arrival more than Prisoners.
But Prisoners top 3.
Oh yeah,
for him.
Yeah, definitely
above Blade. But below Arrival?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's my second.
A lot of people like Blade Runner 2049.
I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's like, it's good.
But like, we even heard people say like Blade Runner 2049 better than Dune.
We might get into that.
Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. Like, it's an interesting take because it's just like, all right, we'll see. I just didn't know 2049 was that loved.
Yeah, it's a sleeper
It was solid.
hit.
It's a solid film.
It's definitely got that cult following like Blade Runner.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, man, okay, Jason Momoa is just popping up on the screen. He's gonna hug Timmy Chalamet.
My boy.
Replacing my man with my boy. That's the Jason Momoa just got to be Jason Momoa in this movie. He just like
He did.
He
And he had a great film.
crushed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
I don't know where to start.
We're all over the place.
I don't know where to start.
It's okay.
Like non-spoiler review of Dune. So coming from a perspective where I knew nothing about anything about this universe except that House Atreides accepts. I think if there was anyone to film this movie, it would be Denis Villeneuve.
I 100% agree with that.
Like, it's a rival, but it has a huge lore behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And does the lore... I think he handles it very well in that I understand what's going on without knowing who all these people are.
Yeah.
I don't need to know everything about all these factions, but he boils it down to the necessities where it's like it's these two houses and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
There's way more in the book, I'm sure. But like here's the basic plot line and here's like I think he like we'll get into spoilers of like what he does, but like one little thing like the voice. Like it's in the very beginning of the movie.
Sick.
Timmy Chalamet
Sick nasty.
is like he's like use the voice and it sets up the voice and then it just carries out throughout the movie.
Yeah.
There's this little sign language that they use throughout the movie that sets it up throughout the movie. Like it's just he builds the world. I think he like takes the book and I've read the first few chapters now after like in the like the past few hours. And I think he brings it and he modernizes it. Yeah. And I think he does it extremely well. Yeah. I think for someone who knows absolutely nothing about it, I can understand character motivation. I can understand why people are thinking this way. And if I'm interested in a certain faction or a certain person, I can look into that more. That's how world building should be. It's not like, hey, here's like 16 different characters and you don't understand why they think this way. Correct. You understand why they think this way, but if you want to know more about where they come from, you can learn about that. That's how you do world building.
Right. No, I 100% agree. For me, like the easiest example I can think of for why Denis was like the right pick was, you know how like a bunch of jobs unfairly like post their requirements of like we need you to have already done the previous this actual job 3 to 5 years and then we'll pay you entry level for the job like whatever. It's a crock of shit. Anyway,
yes sir.
I feel like Denis was like I have the 3 to 5 films that prepare me for this job. And, like, he is the perfect example of that, where it's like, we needed you to have done an Arrival, so you've done Spacecraft, and you've done 2049, so you've done sci-fi-y, like, elements with these characters that have deep, like...
history.
Stuff, yeah, like... And all these things almost felt like they were, like, precursors to, like, and now he can do Dune. Not that, like... he couldn't have already done it, but it just kind of felt like this just made him feel like they were more confident hands.
I just don't know, and this could be something we could talk about more in spoilers, but like...
after this, I have no idea who I would have rathered
That's what I'm going to say. Like, who would direct this movie?
The only thing that I can think of is maybe Nolan.
Yes.
But I don't think...
he would... honestly,
I don't think it would have been...
he would do something weird with time.
Correct.
Because he always does something weird with time.
Yeah.
And it's just like... well, he'll be like, well, now we're gonna show the end of the movie at the beginning of the movie, and like that's a great time for Memento. But like for this movie, I think Denis is the solid choice. Maybe like,
let me play off that. This is the most seamless transition from practical to actual like CGI. That everything looks so real in this movie. That if Nolan got a taste of it, everything would have been CGI, and it wouldn't have had this type of feel.
I get that.
I feel like his practicality to this movie makes the scenes that are fully CGI not feel that way because you've seen a practical thing in this movie that actually is built that looks like that.
Yeah.
That none of the only CGI scenes look truly CGI.
I will say throughout this movie, I never thought, oh, that's a CGI moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I preferred Denis over, because the technology in this movie, this doesn't spoil anything, is just really weird. It's like unorthodox. Everything almost feels like, what if there was like a sci-fi movie built with like the environment of the Bible? Like everybody kind of just wears normal stuff.
Yeah.
But they also have this one little wristband that has no sort of energy source that puts a shield around them.
Yeah. It's
Nothing feels like electricity doesn't exist.
And
it's
like
weird.
It's a weird like swords and sandals kind of vibe.
Yeah.
But also like in the universe is like AI doesn't really exist in this movie.
Right.
But it's like the ships, and it's just like it's this weird combo of like ships and intergalactic travel, but also like we're using swords for our main mode of combat.
Yeah.
And it's like it has a really cool design aesthetic. I would like to say shout outs to the art department for this movie, because they should all get a raise because it is extremely well designed.
Yeah.
I think it's like the look of the universe, the look of every single faction, character, person, whatever. It looks really well done.
Well, and that's why I think like, I don't know if Dune's going to win like Oscar for best film, but if it doesn't win like cinematography or something like
costume design,
cinematography, and like sound, or something, like it's just like,
I bet you West Side Story beats it in costume design. I'm going to say that right. I'm going to say that right now.
That's a hot take.
I hope it doesn't, but I'm sure it does.
That's fair. And it's not like their costumes are like anything super, super special in Dune, but I just think like,
well, I'm going to stop you right there.
Except for one specific costume, which is just, whoa. It's going to be my next Halloween costume for like the next 30 years.
You literally like stopped like, 30 minutes? Oh, when he and Oscar Isaac, Timmy Chalamet and Oscar Isaac are walking, he like stopped me. This is my first time viewing the movie. He stopped and was just like, you know what? That costume that Timmy Chalamet is wearing, I need that outfit more than I need air.
The actual quote was,
sorry,
I need that costume like I need air.
Okay. There you
but
go.
Yes.
Okay.
Not more than, because I still need to survive. But
that costume though.
But I need it just as much as I need oxygen in my lungs. This is beautiful, just black trench coat.
He looks great.
Looking good.
He looks great.
And his hair is just kind of like nice and like dark and curly, kind of like mine. It's like, I could be Paul Atreides.
Yes, sir.
The question is, should we want to be Paul Atreides? And we'll get into that in spoilers, because that's some, I think people who watch part 1 and don't know what happens in part 2 tread lightly on like wanting to be Paul Atreides. Just be careful.
Okay. All right.
Anyway, let's just, I want to get into it.
Yeah.
And so let's do scores.
I think for non-spoilery, I think this movie wants, I thought of this movie yearns to be watched in theaters, Nicholas.
Yeah.
It wants to be in the big screen. It wants to have
Amen.
that big sound. It wants to have like the best possible, like, yes, it's on HBO Max. Yes, we're watching it right now in your basement. But
which is beautiful, but also,
it wants to be on the biggest screen, the biggest sound. Like,
in an ideal world.
Yes. If it's possible, watch this movie in theaters.
Correct.
I already know what you're going to score this movie.
No, you don't. We'll see.
You saw it 3 times. Can I guess, or do you want to just whatever?
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Shoot your score. What,
No.
I'm guessing of what you want to score it?
No, you tell me yours first, and
No,
then you guessed mine.
Okay, mine is going to be honestly an 8.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, it's good.
Yeah.
Like, I think, like, I just don't know the world. I just don't know what's going on. Okay, I know what's going on, but I need to know more.
Yeah.
And that yearning wants me to go and learn more. But it was a little long. I think there were parts that we'll get to in the spoiler was like, oh, I understand why that needs to happen because it's said in the book. But I don't know what's coming next, so I
Yep.
don't have any inkling
Sure.
of like, well, you could have cut this out and put this here and whatever. It's
Yeah.
like I think it was a little long, and some like the ending was like, oh, that feels like it's incomplete, or that feels like not the like that doesn't feel like the climax of this part of the movie. But
Yeah.
but in a way it is, and we'll get to that point.
Yeah.
So for me, it's an 8. For you, I don't think you'll give it the 10. I think you're giving it a 9.5.
Yeah. Okay. I like it. So my thoughts about this are it is tricky because without really spoiling, you need to understand that when this title card flips at the beginning of this film, it says part 1. And you need to probably, in my opinion, that would mean that you need to score it as a part 1, not as a standalone film.
Okay.
Not talking to you specifically. I'm talking to the listeners as like, if you go into this going, I need completeness.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's not
Like,
happening.
to fully appreciate what happens in 1, you need to understand that so much happens in the book. Like, praise the Lord that he actually slowed down and was like, I'm only going to do half. Like, you should be grateful because the amount of stuff that he would have had to have tackled if he tried to do this all in 1 movie would have been literally impossible.
Would you rather this or a 4-hour edition of this Dune?
I still don't think 4 hours is long enough. This feels like this was the perfect pace at which to really condense 21 hours of audiobook into probably what'll end up being about 5 hours of film. I think feels about right.
Okay.
4 still pushing it.
Dang. Okay.
There's still so many events that help set up, because you have to remember too that this is 1 book of a 6 book series.
Right.
And I agree. I think it was a little long, but if part 2 would have started where this movie kind of naturally has like a climax where it could have ended, like we kind of talked about it a little bit when we were there. There was definitely a part where you're like, oh frick, is the movie over?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, it's still got like 45 minutes left. If it would have ended there, it probably would have ended more like better, and people would have said like, whoa.
For a part 1.
Whoa, part
Yeah.
1, holy crap. If you don't get this one scene that they really tackle at the end of this out of the way, it would have just led to a very slow part 2. And now that they got it out of the way, I think part 2 is really gonna part 2 is gonna bang, dude. Like it's gonna be insane. So
see, for me, I don't have that. I don't.
correct.
So
You
for
don't
me, it's
know
like,
what's coming.
For the last 45 minutes is like, oh, all right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
All right.
Okay, yeah. And the one thing I'll say, yeah. I mean, because you thought it was going to end at the, without spoiling, there's a scene in a tent. You thought it was
Yes.
going to end at the tent scene.
I thought I turned to you and I'm like,
Yeah.
Nick, is it over?
It gets pretty hype around there, for
Yeah.
sure. It's my favorite scene of the whole movie.
Mhm.
And so, like, I agree with you that it does have a natural crescendo to be like, boom.
Yeah.
But I'm actually kind of glad that they gave us a chance to be like, oh, thank God it's not over, and give us just a little bit more of just a few more beats, so that when we bridge
setup,
into the second one, we don't have to do that, because where they did this at in the book, there's kind of this natural cutoff where there's kind of some time jumps.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense to stop here. So for that reason, I agree with you. It's hard to judge this as like its own movie and say, man, masterpiece, this one movie, because I feel like you just can't judge it without its counterpart.
Yeah.
But I will say, if the second part can keep the quality and care that this first part had, this has the potential to be like a 2-part movie that I would overall give a 10 out of 10 to.
Nice. But
So if I had to rate this
Yes.
one, I think it's got an asterisk next to it, basically saying it's a 10 for now.
but if no other movie happened,
if no other movie happened, then it gets docked. You write a half a point. And I go, oh, bummer. If there was no movie to come, I would have rather it ended 45 minutes earlier, have this cool cliffhanger, and then just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And leave everyone up to decide, like, oh, I wonder what happens. But knowing that there will be a part 2, I agree with the choice. And I go, this is going to be sick. This is going to be sick.
dude.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
This is the movie that I was talking to my dad about this. My dad would have seen like Star Wars, A New Hope in theaters.
Right.
It was like, whoa, you should have been a part of this. Like when I was a kid, this was insane. Watched all 3 of them. This was crazy. I got the VHS, and now you, my son, I want to show you these because they were so culturally like a phenomenon. I don't think I can watch this with my like children while they're still like little kids.
Yeah.
But I do think this has the potential to be like that for our generation of where were you when Dune came out? And I have them. Do you want to watch them as a teenager?
Yeah.
Because this was a really cool movie. And if they do the trilogy and they do it right for like the first 2 books, I think is kind of the dream. So I think Denis wants to do 3 films where he does part 1 and 2 of the first book, and then the second book is its own movie.
It's shorter, right?
Yeah, it's an 8-hour audio.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's
So
literally a third of the first book.
You can do a movie.
I think it has some pretty crazy potential. And I'm just excited that like it's popular enough that people are going to now be jumping into something that like no one was really talking about.
Yeah,
like,
your diehard sci-fi guys were like,
they were still enjoying
yeah, Dune.
it. Yeah. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like ashamed. I don't feel ashamed of like liking it as much as I do, because I don't think there's really any merit to like hate on me for like being blind to.
Right. So you
know
were
what I mean?
you were hype, and before you saw the movie, you were like, "What if I'm
It
hyping
sucks.
this up and it sucks?"
Yeah.
Were you vindicated?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the only bummer to Dune is that it's so large and complex to truly get your entire like meal in one movie is impossible. And so the only bummer is that like
It has to be.
it's not socially acceptable to make a 6-hour movie.
Yeah.
That's the real fault of this whole thing is like, oh man, I wish this could have been like a 3-part miniseries that I could have just like watched like a 2.5-hour segment, a 2.5-hour segment, and a 2.5-hour segment.
Yeah, but basically that's what the movie is going to be. Like
That's what the movies
Yeah.
will be. So like the only bummer is that there just wasn't enough.
Yeah. I
And
would
that's
have
fine.
I would have sat in that theater for another hour and a half, if I'm honest.
Really?
I'm
Sick.
I am on the ball, dude.
You like the world.
Yeah.
The world's sick.
Yeah.
The world is freaking sick.
All right, I think we just got to say spoilers from here on out.
Yeah, let's tap in the spoiler guy
Yeah.
and just bring him in. The other thing that makes this movie cool in this world is that it appears to be based off of a Earth that we recognize, but the humans have all advanced beyond what the world could offer, and so they've moved on to this universe. So the timeline as I know it is that they make it to like 3000 AD and then are like, nah, interdimensional space travel exists. Or no, something like, maybe it's even longer. But the year that they post here is
10,000 something.
it's 10,000 years since interdimensional travel has been created.
Okay.
And then there's like, it took us 13,000 years before that. And so it's like whatever our actual, like yearly calendar. So it's basically like Jesus dies or whatever, like
Shout out to Jesus.
AD, 13,000 years. And then
we get the travel.
we discover spice, game over.
Spicy mama.
So
So this is 10,000 years after they found
So
spice.
it's almost a total of like
20,000.
26,000 years later.
Jeez, okay.
But it's technically like our descendants. And so you have these weird, like, Atreides comes from Atreus, like the Greeks.
Uh-huh.
Like there's like son, like Atreides means son of Atreus, which is somehow linked to like
bulls and stuff,
like
right?
Greek mythology and stuff like that. And so there's like weird stuff like that where it's like it's very loose because it's so far into the future that it really isn't resembling our civilization.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I had a question, but like they use like meters and stuff.
Yeah.
So like apparently that's
like none of it
stayed
is
over.
like it's not our world. It's just so advanced that like that was the thing I was gonna say too. It feels like this is not a world of too much excess. It feels like everything serves its purpose and is the best version of like, yeah, we have some practical things that get you through Arrakis, these vessels, but we've never had to make anything better than that. And so it feels like all the technology is about where it needs to be, but it's never advancing just for the sake of advancing.
Right.
It feels like here's a spice harvester.
Right.
There is no spice harvester 2.0. This is spice harvester.
Because this is it.
This is it. Like everything just is made to be what it is, and it is, which I think is kind of cool. Like it's a very minimalistic, like
that's the
aesthetic.
whole world. It's like it's minimalistic with like this. They got like the shields.
Yeah,
and
because
got,
they
like,
figured out what worked, and then they just never went beyond it.
Yeah,
because
then,
they don't have to.
I like how the shields also like. This is jumping maybe too far. But like when the invasion happens, there's a missile that counteracts the shield.
Slowly go in.
Like it hits an object and it slows down and then it explodes.
And when it explodes, it also like stays within the shield for a little bit and then it goes, which is kind of neat.
It's
too.
cool.
Like, yeah.
Man, dude, where do you want to start? Because
maybe I don't know if we want to break it down scene by scene, but let's kind of maybe start towards the beginning and work our way through it.
Sure.
Because I think diving too far into the deep end of the pool will just get us talking about the lore.
Yeah.
And since there's only so much we can talk about without me ruining like half of the book for you.
Yeah. I've asked that. I'm starting to read the book now.
Yep.
I've gotten a few chapters in. I wanted to go as clean as possible into this movie, and so again, Nick has, to my bequest, has accepted that. House Kruzich has accepted.
We accept.
And so, but now I'm going into the deep end I'm reading the book and I'm ready to do all of it. But I've said, I'm going to ask you some questions about the book, but I don't want any spoilers past where the movie has gone.
Yes.
And so if that's the same boat you are in coming into this review, then that's what we're going to talk about book spoilers, but up to the point of when this movie ends.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's a thing to remember too, that because Paul has visions, the only way to give him visions is to show him things that exist beyond where you're at in the book. So there are a few scenes where you're seeing things that aren't technically in part one.
Right.
And if we want to discuss that, that's fine. But I'll try my best to not be like, and here's exactly why that's happening, you know, like, and explain it. But I can explain like what's going on, and those types of things. But, yeah, maybe let's start towards the beginning, or do you want to just pick like should we just go straight up with like who your favorite character is?
Man, favorite character. I love me some Oscar Isaac.
You do love your Oscar Isaac. I'll give you that.
Let me just look down at my costume right now that I'm wearing. Poe Dameron. We had a costume party tonight.
We had a Halloween party tonight. Yeah.
I'm wearing Poe Dameron, which is Oscar Isaac in the new Star Wars. I think he is we'll talk, and this was one of the questions you asked me of. This inspired so many other things.
Yes.
I got heavy Game of Thrones vibes. Heavy. Oscar Isaac, if you know Game of Thrones, is your what's his first name?
Ned Stark.
Thank you.
Yep. Haven't even watched the show. Ned Stark. Yeah.
Is your Ned Stark. You're noble man. You're you're kind of like just better and like, oh, he's too good for this world, and obviously that's why he is killed.
Yes.
Ned Stark spoilers,
Ned Stark.
which you've probably
Yeah.
known about. But I think he is a really great character. I think Jessica is
Lady
really
Jessica.
great. Lady Jessica is interesting.
Rebecca Ferguson.
Plays a great. I think, okay, let's just say the acting in this movie, everyone acts so well.
Do you have any idea who you think's going to be nominated for it? Do you think anyone's going to get a nom for it? I think Rebecca Ferguson will.
If anyone is Rebecca Ferguson, I don't think anyone else is getting nominated.
You don't think Timmy?
Nah.
I bet he does.
Okay.
I bet he gets at least a Golden Globe.
I
don't think he'll get the Golden Globe, but I think
he'll
he'll
get
get
the nom?
nominated. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. I just think like the weight of this movie is carried by Timmy Chalamet and Rebecca Ferg.
Thanks for abbreviating their last names to save us some time. God bless.
Arby Ferb, you know,
Yeah.
and Timmy Shea.
Ari Ferg and Timmy Shea, baby.
I liked their dynamic. I liked that like there's
Mhm.
this mother-son relationship.
Yep. And they pulled it off even with only a 12-year age difference.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Rebecca Ferguson would have to be super young to have Timothy
Oh
Chalamet.
my goodness.
Technically.
Anyways, not thinking about that.
They aged her up a little bit though.
Yeah,
I think they like made sure she like didn't wear like makeup and like had like this really just kind of like bleak,
Yeah.
like stressed look the
I
entire.
think Timmy Chalamet just looks super young in that movie, where
True.
it's like this kid.
He's
Yeah.
infinitely a boy.
And then
a little bit.
Zendaya and
Yeah.
like their like counterpart were like, oh, he's like, oh, this girl is on Arrakis, and it's like they feel like they are very young. And
Yeah.
they're like whatever.
Sure.
Even though I think I'm probably
He's
older.
technically supposed to
He's
be a
older than me.
teenager in the book. I think
You're
he's
right.
supposed to be like 15
Yeah.
or 16, somewhere around that book.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, favorites. I would probably go for Lady Jessica and
Yeah.
accepts.
Yeah.
Mr. Accepts. What
I-
about you?
I think the first two watches I wouldn't have gone Lady Jessica. But when I really stopped to look at all that she was carrying throughout the film, you realize like just so many nonverbals have to be communicated through her. And in the book, it's obviously a lot more of like a mind thing, like a psychological, like here's what Lady Jessica's thinking and why this is crazy. I really came to respect her performance because it's like she is just a hot mess this entire movie. It's just like, did I do something great? Did I do something horrible? Did I do something great? And like just the stress of like being the son of, or being the mother of a
This
son
chosen
who
one, yeah.
could be a chosen one, but if he is, does that mean I'm safe? Does that mean I'm protected, or did I just create a monster? Like, who knows? And just this, like, she just did a really good job of just like, she's having that internal battle, but they can't just have like a narrative or have her narrate her thoughts, you know, her stuff. So definitely performance for me. I think, I hope people don't sleep on Jason Momoa's performance because Duncan Idaho like gets to literally be like one of the coolest characters in this movie. Every scene he's in, it, like you said, I think it just felt like, oh, Jason Momoa literally gets to be like
Himself.
No holds barred, just a genuinely good guy and a badass.
Yeah.
Like that's who I think Jason Momoa is. He's not just a killer like Khal Drogo or whatever from Game of Thrones, where it's like, I just kill, you know? I think Jason Momoa could literally snap my neck if he wanted to, but I think he'd rather give me a hug in real life.
Like, hey, let's go,
yeah,
buddy.
he'd
Let's
be like,
go to
my
the bar."
boy. And so I feel like Duncan Idaho's that gentle warrior, and I feel like that's who he is as a person in real life. And so it's just really cool to see him get to be him and not like some ulterior version of, we just hired you because you grow a great beard.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was just really excited. And then I do think some people are not in love with Timothée Chalamet's performance, but I think I would disagree. And just to tackle a 15-year-old who is going through what a 15-year-old goes through, and then is also a son of a duke, who may have to lead his people one day to then have to watch his father die and then may have been blessed with this gift, this terrible purpose, what the book calls it, is so scary that, like, if you can do any of the things that you're called to do, this destiny that you're given, there's just a lot of layers to that.
Yeah.
And I think he handles it in stride.
Yeah.
I'm
not saying he doesn't. I think he did.
I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't saying you said because you didn't mention him or whatever. I wasn't saying that. I just mean I think a lot of people are like, yeah, I just don't know if he's a leading man. It's like, no, I think he is. I think he handled it perfect. And I think just anybody's like real negative opinions of this movie need to like wait and see the part 2. Just like any of the so positive probably also need to wait for part 2 as well. You know, like, so I'm trying my best to be like, this is textbook perfection. I'm not doing that because I know that it could just completely shit the bed for part 2.
I'm saying that because the book, if they stay true to the book, or are you saying like if the movie part 2 is not great?
I think because we didn't know ahead of time that part 2 was coming out and they just had to film part 1. I mean, granted, I don't know, maybe they knew and they just kind of like held it from the press to make it seem like we caused them to.
Denis Villeneuve movies never make any money.
True. That's also true. I don't know. I just think... I don't know. I think they're... I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think they're fine. I think it was going to make it regardless.
Right.
But ultimately... This
is a part 1, and it needs a part 2.
It does need a part 2. Yeah. So thank you for making that. But So I hope people go and make this like a really like successful film. I mean, it's gonna have its part 2 regardless. But I think they need to understand too that like
there's a finish.
And it will make or break. I think. Regardless of how good or bad people think this part 1 is, part 2 will solidify whether that was true or not.
Mm-hmm.
Is ultimately what I was trying to get at.
And I think too, like my view of the movie, like I have no idea where this is. I mean, like I kind of have an idea, and we'll get to that point. But like I kind of have an idea where this is going.
Yeah.
But if it truly like just gets crazy and whatever happens, like my judgment of this movie is going to change based off of what happens in the second movie.
Yeah, so if it's great, you may bump up your 8 to whatever.
Right.
Yeah. And I think I'm more on the safe side of like, I can't imagine Denis going, I'm going to make this so good, and then I'm just going to shit the bed for the second one.
The second part is just like...
So for me, I'm like, I think this is it. I think they did it. And I think part 2 is going to be just
if
as
the
good.
Quality of the first one equals the quality of the next movie,
and it gets to do what part 2 is going to do, it's going to be insane.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be insane.
Okay.
It's going to be the Infinity War to the end game. I mean, the one downside to pitting those two together is that if you did just leave Infinity War by itself, if we were to do Avengers Infinity War, I mean, some people would say great film by itself. Don't need a part 2. I don't think you can say that technically about part 1 of Dune because it does need, there's not enough meat on the bone of part 1 to say as itself, great. But I think knowing like, wow, the care that was taken for this, I can confidently say if part 2 is even just like equal or even slightly lesser then
it's good.
It's still going to be fine.
Right. If there was never a part 2, I think this movie is still really interesting and really good.
Agreed.
And it's really well done, and the character pieces are like interesting, and like the factions.
It'll still be memorable in its own way.
Right. But it's still like, we never got that next part.
Yeah.
You had some questions that you sent to me.
I did.
Do you want to go through those?
Sure. The first one was kind of sarcastic, but also being for real. Because this book was written in the 60s, I know I said this to you a numerous amount of times, but it's like there are so many sci-fi things that are so not secretly inspired by Dune, but now are going to get called out for it because Dune hasn't been in the limelight as much as it will be now. How does this change your opinion? Or like, are there movies that you're like, oh shit, this is so like inspired by? Does it still like I'm not asking you to be like, now do you just shit on a bunch of movies? Because I don't want that as the ultimate goal, but like, do you see the inspirations throughout sci-fi?
100%. I mean, like, the major inspiration I was feeling during this movie was Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Was like this political intrigue at the forefront, but also, hey, there's some action to it.
Yep.
I mean, you got like, I think what surprised me, and this was I guess we'll save that for your next question or whatever. But like, Dune had that like hero figure, the like, the Star Wars, the chosen one, the person that's like gonna save the world, this Jesus figure basically, which ultimately was a copy of Lord of the Rings. Let's just throw that out there, but wasn't a copy of Jesus. I think you see, like, we brought up Avatar a few times in conversation, where it's just like there's this person, and then his initial group crumbles, and then he goes with the Na'vi, he goes with the native people, and rises up and stops his initial group. That's what I feel like is going to happen with this, with whatever. But you got like Star Wars, you got Matrix in a sense, you got like anything with this chosen one principle that's like, you're going to be the one to take over. But what's interesting with Dune is that Lady Jessica has a real impact in how Paul Atreides becomes what's the name of the Jesus figure?
The Kwisatz Haderach.
Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah.
She has a real impact in that. So like, it's not like random. It's not like, oh, you were born and now you're Anakin Skywalker. For whatever reason, you're the chosen one.
Yeah, it's
like,
random enough in that she couldn't control that he would have any control over his powers.
But she tried enough.
By letting a boy live, she was in her own way, like, causing the one thing she was told not to do to, like, at least come to fruition.
Right. So it feels like a little bit less random than like The Matrix, the one where Neo is like, you're the one because the movie says you're the one.
Yeah. The chosen one was always supposed to be a male Bene Gesserit. And so the fact that she was giving birth to a male Bene Gesserit means she was at least giving him a chance. Right. That's fair.
So, and again, the one is kind of portrayed throughout cinema, and it's like the Game of Thrones analogy, which I know you haven't seen, but like the Azor Ahai, the prince that was promised, Jon Snow, is like, hey, he's gonna like bring balance to the Force or whatever. Yeah. So like, essentially, I don't know where Timothée Chalamet, where Paul Atreides is gonna go in this, but that very much feels like sci-fi. Chosen one.
No, I agree. It's hard really for me to like respect Star Wars as such a unique idea anymore. I think after discovering the Dune universe, I'm a little like, whoa, like you definitely copied a lot of things. There's still like, I think you simplified it. I think George Lucas like simplified it quite a bit. Lightsabers are cooler than Chris knives, probably, but it's a boy on a desert planet who's the chosen one, who's like, there's some things there, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying like, I mean, any young adult book probably has like the same,
like Aragon, Hunger Games,
the first
like
act
Maze Runner,
is always
whatever.
the same. So it's not like I'm like screw Star Wars, don't like Star Wars ever again. No, but I think Star Wars is more for the masses and more for the kids than Dune is, because Dune's tackling this like messianic figure, and that's a little bit harder of a pill to swallow as a kid who's, it's like,
you would look at Darth Vader and it's like, that's a pretty bad guy.
Yeah, it's more closer to like Anakin's like walk of, you could be the good one, you could be the bad one, instead of Luke, where Luke was just kind of like destined to always be good. There really wasn't ever a chance that he would be bad. It's more of the Anakin story for sure. But yeah, it seems like there's quite a bit of inspiration from this book to a lot of sci-fi, but I just thought that was kind of an interesting question to ask, to be like, what other fiction could have been inspired by?
I think it inspired probably a lot of fiction.
Yeah.
I mean, like, more than we've probably even talked about. Like, I don't know when the Chosen One principle was really enacted, but this felt like that.
I also like, too, that, don't get me wrong, I think a lot of the Chosen Ones are technically, like, it's not their choice.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're the Chosen One, but this feels a little more like, at least in part 1 of Dune, you feel this tension that Paul has of like, I didn't ask for any of this.
Yeah, so my thing I was thinking about was, I understood Paul's hesitancy with becoming the Chosen One, but you've always talked about this terrible purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the movie really conveyed him being this terrible purpose. Him being like, I could destroy worlds with this whatever power. It was more like, oh, I'm going to seek revenge for this, and I'm justified. Where it was never like, I'm going to seek revenge, but also push the envelope and kill people that I am unjustified in killing.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I think because they work in kind of mystery and whatnot for a lot of his visions, that tent scene tells you a lot, where he starts to like see people worshiping him and obeying him and following his commands, and like he doesn't have to be in the war anymore. He can just watch from above, because everyone's bought into his following and are just doing his bidding. That's where it gets tricky, because revenge is one thing, but then to continue spreading is a different thing.
Right.
And that's where I think he is scared, because he's like, there's going to be a movement in my name, and it may get bigger than me. And what do I do? Yeah. Do I lean into it? Do I tell him not to do it? Is it just better that I just accept it because the lesser of two evils? Those are the questions that get asked, where it's like, what happens when it becomes bigger than you, the person that started the whole thing, you know? And I just think as a 15-year-old, that's just really hard to grasp. I mean, at all. I mean, you're just trying to maybe get a girlfriend when you're 15 years old, let alone like, what happens if I become a messiah to some people, you know? So I just think it's a really neat concept, and yeah, it's something I can get behind, I think. So, but the other reason I like it is there's no clear hero. He could be, but there's this enough of an asterisk next to it of like, he's scared shitless when he sees his like future. It could go a route that could be like too far. And so, yes, you have your like Luke Skywalker, but like, what if Luke Skywalker gained all of the universe's alliance and then he decided to do one bad thing? Now what do? You're the villain.
Yeah, see, to me as a non-book reader, I don't see that.
I see what you're saying.
I don't see, like, Paul Atreides is our Luke Skywalker. He is like okay, we're rooting for him. You know, his family has fallen apart, and now he's going to have his turnaround and have his revenge. And, like, the Fremen are going to come back and do the thing, and he's going to take over Dune, and he's going to have his seat as power, and he's going to do fine. Like, so to me, I don't see the terrible purpose. I don't see the, like, he's gonna push it. Like I get it, and like I feel like my viewing of his character is like when he has those moments where he does very well acting wise, of like I have this purpose to revenge my family.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I see.
Gotcha. Fair enough.
So as a don't know.
Yeah,
anything.
I don't think they wanted to give too much away from the second part, but the part that's really spooky is, and I like using spooky as my like main adjective. You get to see this really cool scene in the tent when he's tripping balls on Spice.
Yes, sir.
And you see him with his Fremen warriors in these new like uniforms and just freaking slaying dudes with like dual wielding Chris knives.
There's
it's insane.
Sandworm in the
and
background.
there's a sandworm in the background. You're like, okay, what? I don't know what this guy's gonna do, but he's gonna do something sick. Then it shows people with the Atreides flag looking up to him in the ship while there's piles of bodies being burned. And that's where it goes from, is this liberation or is this like
domination,
extinction of a certain type of person? And that's where it goes from like, I just want to free Dune to never mind, I want to spread this cleansing. He says an unquenchable fire in his speech in my name. And so I think at first it could start as a noble cause, but there's this warning in that when he's seeing those visions, but it may be an unquenchable fire where it's like, hey, you took the best planet and you did this. Think of what we could do everywhere.
Right.
And he even has a line that's telling when he's talking to Liat Kynes, he's like, I can make Arrakis a paradise with the swipe of my hand if I wanted to. And it's just like, yes, you could. And
but
so we have to trust that he won't be tempted as the hero of this story, but we also have to understand that he's literally a kid.
Yeah.
And so there's just this like fear, which fear is also a huge part of this story. Like,
fear is the mind killer.
Yes, exactly. It's the theme of, well, maybe you try to just let go of fear and be like, we just need to move forward. And so there's just all these like things that are going back. It's just a big tug of war and you don't know which side's going to win. And I think that's a beautiful way to set up part one where you're just like, am I rooting for Paul? I don't know. I don't know if I'm rooting for Paul with blue eyes in a ship with burning bodies. But I'm definitely rooting for him when he's like killing all the Sardaukar dudes who are like awful dudes. So you're just like, that's what I like. When I'm cheering for Luke Skywalker in episode 4, I'm not going like, I don't know about this guy.
He might, yeah.
This guy's too stupid to be a bad guy. Like for most of the first movie. Second part, you start to like gain respect for him. And then you're like, okay, this guy's clearly like the good guy.
Right.
With Paul, I don't think it's as clear because these visions are so confusing.
That's fair.
So
that's fair.
But that's just as you read the book, we'll discuss more. And so maybe we revisit this, and it's not a wait until part 2 comes out in 2023, but maybe we revisit it after you've read the book and be like, now what are your thoughts? And then let's go from there, and we'll just keep living it up.
Yeah, just to say, like, with no book thoughts, it's like I didn't fully get that.
That's fine.
Part.
No, I totally get it. And I don't want to tell you enough to be like, here's why you should think this way
really
or
think
this way.
Because Paul Atreides is about to pop off.
Yeah. Because I think that's fair. There's a lot of people going to this that are like, man, Paul's the man.
Yeah.
And I think like most of the internet who's read Dune would be like, hey, just be careful of saying that.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that's what I would say. Well, we kind of like did a pretty good job of going through the questions. You kind of had your favorite characters, standout performances. What makes you attracted to Oscar Isaac?
What?
Oh, wait, did we already do that one?
Oscar Isaac is the GOAT, let's just say.
I think we definitely have to give credit where credit's due. Hans Zimmer did the score of this film. Yeah.
Like the score where it's like,
it's insane. The sounds, the music is crazy.
The sound mixing is great.
There's the theme of when Paul goes from being Paul to kind of like tripping on Spice and kind of maybe is becoming like more of his like god-like character of the Kwisatz Haderach or whatever they call it, is amazing. And there's this scene where he's in they're going to the spice harvesting, and we're watching it right now, and the worm's on its way. There's this beautiful moment where he's tripping on spice, and Gurney Halleck has to go get him. Josh Brolin has to go get him, but he is feeling the worm coming to him, and at one point, we're about to see it, he says,
I hear your footsteps.
I hear your footsteps, old man. That's a dual meaning line.
Oh.
He hears the worm.
Oh.
And he hears Gurney Halleck.
Oh, okay. I got the Gurney Halleck thing.
There's this beautiful like moment where you're like, who's the old man? Well, it's probably also the thing that's existed on this planet for a really long time too.
Oh, that's good.
There's some really cool stuff that's
that.
happening, like that they just kind of do. And so like he wasn't feeling danger because of the spice, because it was like kind of turning him to like kind of connect him to the planet.
Rankus, yeah.
And so there's just like little things like that where I'm just like, hell yes. Like that wasn't even in the book, but it was just like a really cool moment where he's like, I hear your footsteps, old man. You're like, I don't think he just meant the old man that's right behind. And then did you notice too that like it cut and the Gurney Halleck was right behind him? Like the time thing that happens where like when he's tripping,
and then boom. And it takes you out of that trip where it's like, he's like, no, it's great.
Same thing happens with when they do the Gomja bar scene, which we need to discuss.
We're going to talk about that scene because that's one of my, we'll talk about that favorite scene.
But when he enters the room with the Reverend Mother, it does this weird beat where it shows him walking towards the mother, and then it flashes back to him just still standing at the door. And then she goes, come to me. And then he does the flash forward.
So good.
So you see these like little moments where you're like taken out and you're like, something's about to happen. And it's just making you go like, that's Paul, like knowing some of these things ahead of time, because he has the ability to kind of almost see slightly ahead of time because of his gift. But they don't explain it to you. And so Denis just like, hey, I'm trusting like you readers out there to maybe like do the work for me a little bit.
I don't even think like it's the readers. It's like I think he just does so well of like non-verbal communication in this movie.
Yeah, that's fair too.
I like from a non-reader, it's like I kind of know what's going on with the voice and like all this stuff. It's like not with the whole like old man thing. That was really cool. But like I think he does a really good job of like from knowing nothing of this universe to being like, hey, you kind of understand what's going on right now.
Yeah.
And if you want to learn more, you can learn more, but you still know what's happening in this movie.
Yeah.
Without knowing anything.
Exactly. And I think the Gomja bar scene's also a sweet area where you get to see like there's something more to Paul than meets the eye. Do you want to talk about why you like the Gomja bar scene, and then I'll kind of talk about why like it was freaking sick?
Sure. I will say it's interesting because so I read the first few chapters of the book. The Gomja bar scene is the opening chapter of the book.
It is.
That's crazy to me. Because like I honestly like that wasn't the opening scene of the movie.
Agreed.
I think it's way better to have like this whole setup with like whoever the people were coming down and signing the treaty and saying like House Atreides accepts, all that stuff. Like having all that set up and the voice be set up previously in the morning, I think that's way better than having it just be like, the Gomja bar.
Oh, yeah. The book's like, hey, open up the fire hydrant where you're about to just get sucked in. Yeah,
so like, I would say to this point of watching or reading the first few chapters of the book, I like the movie better than the book.
Just does a good job.
It's just, like, it sets it up so much more. And like setting up the trip to Arrakis and like with Duncan Idaho and taking that with like Duncan Idaho and him don't meet the first time. They're just like his name is dropped and he's like, oh, the scouting party he went. So like I think that's all set up better, and like the whole like lore drop of like the sand walk and like the spice and whatever. I think it's done very well. But I think the Gomja bar scene is really well because maybe this is where Timothy Chalamet gets his actor
100%,
because like his acting in the pain of being in that box where like the little slight hand of his wrist and like him be like, this is hurting, but then like it's actually really hurting, and it's just like his this is like
he's just grunting.
Yeah, and it's not like, I think Timothy or Denis Villeneuve does a really good job of not being like, hey, this is where we show burning bodies. This is where we show like pain, stabbing, knife, and it's like it's just all on Timothy Chalamet, and I think it's very well done.
Yes, it is.
I think it's a great scene.
It's also when we get our first beat of the Kwisatz Haderach theme, where he finally is like, okay, Jessica's like reciting the like fears the mind killer speech. He's kind of connected to her, and then he just like looks up at the Reverend Mother, and it's like, I got a little extra like something helping me out
for you.
And then she's kind of like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And then he's like, yeah, I think I'm gonna be able to handle this. Good. And then he just kind of like looks up at her, just like, I got this.
I'm good. I think it's
a cool setup.
Lady Jessica has a really good scene in that as well, where she's like standing outside and saying like, she's freaking out. And I'm like, why is she freaking out? Like, what's going on? And like, so I think later on it's like she's worried about her son, you know?
Yeah.
And so like, I think there's so much conveyed in just that moment of her freaking out.
Yeah.
Of like, just like there's so much nonverbal communication in this movie that is conveyed so well. And I think not only, but like Denis Villeneuve does a great job of doing that.
I agree. No, I'm with you. Yeah, the Gomja bar scene. What was I going to say about it that I was like,
I think you kind of explained to this one on the drive home of like Jessica's feeling of being concerned for her son, but then when it happens.
Yeah, so there's this like kind of this weird tug of war that she's feeling because she knows like there's a very real chance he could die. But there's also this very real chance that if he doesn't, that there's a possibility that he might be the like Messiah that they've been trying to build. And if that's really true, then they need to giddy up because this is the thing that they've been working for towards their entire, like, it's like if you believed in something this entire time, but the truth of it is like you kind of just like, you kind of doubt it until it's like real.
Actually happening, yeah.
And then you're like, oh wait, I don't know what I believe because I wasn't expecting it really to come to fruition. That's kind of like Jessica's character this entire time. It's like, the Duke really wanted a son. What are the chances it's the Kwisatz Haderach? Well, now I have to maybe lead my like son to the slaughter because maybe he's not powerful enough, but I trained him as best I could. Oh, he's alive. Oh shit, this could be worse.
Yeah.
You know, just like
I'm glad that he's alive, but also his future
I'm relieved,
is so
but now I have a newfound stress of, oh shit, what does this mean?
The whole like weight on Paul Atreides' shoulders is so heavy, and I think again, not that I think he's gonna get an actor now, but I think he handles it so well. It's like, not only do I have to carry this weight of House Atreides, which I mostly know is gonna fall to me because my dad's gonna die pretty soon, but also I have to be this savior of this world.
Yeah.
I think he handles it very well. Do you want to jump to your favorite scene? You kind of talked about it a little bit.
Yeah. My favorite scene for sure is when Lady Jessica and Paul escape the fleeing like ornithopter with like the Harkonnens on it. They use the voice to subdue the bad guys and
great scene.
I guess not subdue, basically slice their throats. They're staying in the tent, which they do. This is another really cool, just like creative choice, but they show like the moisture getting collected on the tent, so that they can drink water because everything's like recyclable
right,
and
the
stuff. It's like just really cool.
A cool design.
Anyway. But yeah, he's in the tent, and this is when he finally has a second bout of like spice tripping, is what the easiest way to call it is. But like spice in this is not naturally just like, no one's snorting spice, but like when it's around, he's sensitive to it because of his destiny. Basically, like his connection to Arrakis ends up becoming like part of why he is who he is. But there's just this beautiful like, it's almost like literally a teaser trailer in a movie,
Mhm.
part 1
Right.
of like, hey, guess what? Like, if you can stick around for part 2, there's some shit that's gonna go down, you know.
Mhm.
And you start to get these glimpses of, hey, here's about 4 visions. Some might be true, some might not be true. We're just gonna show them all to you because his visions aren't 100% concrete. But man, if they're right, we're in for something. And you just get this really cool part of a vision where him and the Fremen are taken out, like the Sardaukar army, which is basically the equivalent of like the universe's like government army, the Emperor's army. And the scene starts with like a smiling Chani played by Zendaya of just like, hey, look over here, look at this like cool thing that's happening. And you're like, oh, something peaceful. And it's like, nope, just people getting their throats slit. This is insane. And Timmy's like leading the way. Paul is just like stabbing and doing crazy stuff. Like he's clearly gonna be a leader of these people, and pop off. And you have this worm in the background. You're just like, so wait, is the worm like good? Is it bad? Is it like possibly like on one side or the other? Is that possible? We don't know.
Yeah.
No, the movie doesn't tell you. You get a vision of the same Fremen holding House Atreides flags, cheering, shouting up to Zendaya, Chani, and Timmy, both with blue eyes, which is from the book, but they have blue eyes, meaning this is to show some time has passed.
Right,
it seems
the spice affects their
spice makes them like have blue eyes, so he's now kind of like full on Fremen, you know. And there's just piles of just like hundreds of burning bodies, and they're all cheering, and he's just kind of like, "What's up? It's me, Paul, my guy." And then he starts to like chant that like thing of like there will be an unquenchable fire, like, and all this stuff, and it's just like this really spooky, like, it's not like, hey, you pulled the sword from the stone, now you get to go kick everyone's ass. It's like, you might be the most powerful being in all of existence, use it well.
Yeah. And
here's a vision of you basically becoming like emperor and killing everyone.
Right.
Thoughts.
Yeah.
You're just like, that's, there
you go.
I mean, like, that's kind of what it leaves you with. And that was when you looked over at me and was like, oh shit, this is just like a teaser trailer because the movie's over.
Yeah.
Like, this is the cliffhanger. And it would have naturally ended in a really good spot there, but that first 45 minutes of part 2, had they had to do the whole
would
like
kind of boring,
walking the sand, bumping into the worm, and then going and fighting Jameis, so it was better for them to get to the Fremen so that we can just get to the Fremen.
Okay, yeah, for me, like, ending it there, for me, knowing nothing is where, like, oh, that makes sense. And then, like, having it be, like, the climax being he does the duel and kills the first person ever. Like, yeah. Like, and now he becomes part of the Fremen. Like, character-drivenly wise, yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
But, like, for me, like, sitting on the outside looking in, it's like, oh, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Like, it was cool and it was good, but, like, the climax was that point where it's like, I have this power and, like, what do I do with it?
Yeah.
And, like, maybe doing something where it's like you leave a cliffhanger where it's like, now we have to go meet the Fremen kind of thing. Like, that makes more sense, but is that typical? Like, but I don't know the setup. I don't know what's happening. So, like, having that extra 45 minutes, if it sets it up better, cool, great.
Yeah, I think in retrospect, you'll be happier because I think if you could have 2.5 hours for part 2 instead of 3.5 hours, so that you could have this extra part at the beginning of the film, I think you'll be happier with. It's going to feel kind of added on because it is kind of like the book is split up into 3 books. The first book is, it says like book 1 goes from like some point to some point, and then there's a book 2, and then there is a book. So it's like acts 1 through 3. If you just did act 1, which would be what happens, like where it naturally ends in the movie, and you don't do at least part of act 2, it's just too much of a beast, I think, to tackle in one movie.
Okay, that's fair.
So I think you'll in retrospect be happy. But for right now, I can totally see why you would think that. And
Yeah.
then maybe after you read the book, you'll be like,
I get it.
holy shit, there's so much more to this than I
Yeah,
thought.
I just don't know. I just don't know what's happening next. Like,
Mhm.
what I think is happening next.
Yeah.
Is he's gonna become part of the Fremen.
Yep.
And he's gonna have his revenge and take
Mhm.
over Arrakis.
Mhm.
And he'll be like the leader of Arrakis, and they'll be like, "Wow, good job!" And he's like, "Well, you know what? We should like destroy
Mhm.
Bad People World."
Mhm.
And they go to Bad People World, they destroy that, and then
Mhm.
they're like, "Yay!"
Mhm.
That's pretty much what's gonna happen.
Yeah. Interesting thoughts. I'm excited to hear your thoughts after you read, because you may be right, you may be wrong. You'll see.
You're being a spicy boy, Nick.
Hey, this is what you've asked me to do.
I appreciate it. I appreciate
I'm
it.
showing as much self-control as I can.
I know.
I think let's talk factions, and then I think we can wrap it up.
Sure.
Because I do think everyone's gonna have something that they like or dislike, and there's a few characters that will probably overshadow or whatever. But since we're gonna revisit this after the book is read,
Yeah.
I think we can probably hit some of those. But like, out of the factions, what did you think of each one? Do you feel like one of the main complaints I heard was that all of the colors are so neutral in this movie that it wasn't clear who was who? I could tell pretty easily, but I know I also had book knowledge.
I could tell just based off context of like, okay, so like there's basically three factions in this movie. There's Atreides, there's Harkonnens, Fremen, but then also the Harkonnens have Imperial people.
Yeah, there's the overarch. So everyone there's like all the great houses, but then there's the emperor who rules over all of them, and that's his army, is the Sardaukar army.
Right, right, the Sardaukar, and like the Sardaukar. So this is how I understand it. So there's the emperor and all these other great houses, and then I'm sorry, the what's
Harkonnens.
Harkonnens?
Yeah.
Or
Harkonnens.
Harkonnens. The Harkonnens used to own Arrakis, but then they left by imperial decree because wink wink nudge nudge, and House Atreides takes over.
Yes.
But then they get screwed over because House Atreides was becoming too powerful, and the emperor was like, "Hey, I don't want you to be too powerful," and they get screwed over. And they get attacked by the Harkonnen, but also the Sardaukar, but secret Sardaukar.
Right.
And then they fall to ruin, and then the Fremen are like, "Hey, we're also here."
Yeah, the Harkonnens got so rich off of their spice over the last 80 years that they actually had more money than the emperor himself.
Right.
And so it was like they were just so rich that they could literally do whatever they wanted. And I think the emperor, they say like the emperor is a jealous man in this movie, and so it's just like he can be bought basically at this point. And well, somebody has all the wealth and somebody has all the fighters. So if they can kill the great fighters, how else would the great houses really say no to them?
Right. So my thing was like, well, if the emperor and this other guild are attacking this major guild, then why isn't there this backlash?
Civil war or whatever.
But then like if you're killing the greatest fighters, then it's like
the
political power of like, hey, look, we did this, but what are you gonna do about it? Because we hold all this power.
We killed all the good guys. Yeah. And the beautiful like classic trope of any good book is that the enemy overestimated that there could be something greater out there that could fight them. The Fremen is that, where they think maybe tops they have like 50,000, but the movie and the book also talks about this, but there's so many of these sieges across Dune, which are these underground like civilizations of the Fremen, which make up almost 1 million Fremen. And so it's like, if you can just mobilize them, good luck, because you weren't expecting that. And so the chessboard looks like they wiped off the whole other team, but they forgot about an entire team times 5 underground.
Right.
And so now it's kind of setting the war, or setting up this like well, we cleared out the Atreides, so who the
But
hell's
really,
going to stop
yeah.
us? And it's like, well, you just awoke the beast,
The sleeping giant.
Yeah, the Fremen.
So I like that. I'm sure in the book there's like I've already heard Spacing Guild and like Bene Gesserit's is a faction and stuff, but like I don't know, like I know very little about all these other little factions.
Yeah.
But like boiling it down to these basic 3 was a good idea because
Sure.
it just streamlined the story.
I agree.
Basic idea you've already kind of talked about for Bene Gesserit is like they're these kind of like witches, basically, but then they get married to powerful leaders.
They'll send off their sisterhood to like other people to keep the bloodlines. Like they're like, hey, we could use a Bene Gesserit with like a little more Atreides in it. So why don't you go sleep with Duke Leto? He just happens to also be a great guy who's actually going to fall in love with you. So Lady Jessica got like a lucky. I wouldn't say she's lucky because he also doesn't like officially marry her, but like is technically in love with her. Like it kind of talks about that in the book where it's like she's like he might have a few concubines. I don't remember if that's actually in the book.
In the book, I just read this part, and he said there are no other women.
Yeah, okay. So he's stayed true to her even though he hasn't married her.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's just this like off.
There's this line in the movie that I asked you about. I was like, oh, they weren't married. I thought they were married.
Yeah, and it's not clear until you see that line. Then you're like, oh, wait, I had no idea that they weren't even, because in the book it's clear that she was kind of like sent to him as that. But they actually do like love each other pretty much, or as close as you can in that relationship.
Yeah.
So even though it was kind of arranged.
Yeah.
But they're trying to get like a little bit of blood from this, a little bit of blood from this, and then trying to make they're trying to produce the Kwisatz Haderach as like specific as possible. And so in their minds they like need a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And Jessica kind of was like, I'm just going to take it into my own hands a little bit on accident, but also maybe on purpose.
So faction wise, am I on the right track?
No, I think that's pretty much the 4 I had were what we were talking about. The Bene Gesserit, yeah, I mean, are kind of their own faction, but I kind of was thinking just like the ones that fought and stuff like that. So the Bene Gesserit, I think we'll get more of. I think they have greenlit a HBO Max series called The Bene Gesserit Sisterhood that Denis is at least doing one episode of, if not some of them. So we'll get more of an in-depth, maybe understand. I'm guessing it's some sort of prequel story with them. They're very interesting. They're kind of like really, really, really strict Jedi. It kind of feels like it doesn't matter who has the Force. We get to decide who has the Force instead of we're going to go figure out who has it and see if they can wield it. It's like, no. We're going to like literally do like we've played our Dune Imperium game. There's literally selective breeding is one of the like that's their thing. Like they only want to create what they need. Yeah. So they're very overseeing that. But
there was a thing like playing the Doom game at least gave me a basic understanding of like I knew what the Fennec. I knew the name Fennec. I knew what the name Bene Gesserit. I didn't know what they did, but I knew the name Fennec and Solari and like spies.
Fremen is what you're trying to say. Yes.
Again, I don't know it exactly.
Yes,
but like I knew the word. I was like,
people, those types of things.
Like, I didn't know sand. I just knew the word. I just know what it was attributed to.
That's fair.
And Solari, they say Solari.
Some of the vocabulary, you kind of already knew.
Yeah, so I knew something. I knew like, the Bene Gesserit. Because we played the game twice, I was like, okay, that's something that's important. Yeah. And they name dropped that. I'm like, now I attached that to it. So I think I had like a 10% head start of anyone else. Yeah.
That's fair.
Man, is there anything else you want to say? I have a few more things.
I was just gonna say like, the Harkonnens. Were pretty brutal. I think they lived up to their name. One distinct change they made from like, we can maybe go back and watch the 84 Dune if you want to, or if you really want to, but all the Harkonnens were a lot greasier and like had like disgusting like acne and like they were so overindulgent that it actually made them like physically very disgusting. Like the Baron always has like just huge porous like pus all over his face. They're also ironically all redheads. for some reason. And in
Sure.
this movie, they made a choice to make them all bald.
Yeah.
All the Harkonnens are bald.
Okay.
I don't know. Just kind of an interesting thing. Atreides, they're all sexy.
Yeah. Yes,
Every
sir.
single one of them. It's what it is.
The good people.
The Fremen, though, I think they did the blue eyes really well. Like, it doesn't look like over CGI'd or over like contact. If they had like contacts in, I couldn't tell. I think they did a great job. It's weird. Everything's so vague enough that you're kind of like, I think I want to be a Fremen. And then maybe you find out more about the Fremen and you're like, never mind. I don't think I should be a Fremen.
Yeah.
Like, it's a weird, like, at least with like Star Wars, like, I want to be a Jedi.
Yeah.
It's like, for the most part, that's
Sure.
a great call. Like, it's just hard to be like, these are the
best
perfect
pack.
people,
Yeah.
like, because even though the Atreides seem to be kind of pure, I mean, Duke Leto still was like wanting power in the end. Like, he didn't want, it's hard to say that he didn't want riches because he did pick the Dune planet. I mean, if you didn't think you were going to get some money from getting spice, I mean, you're kind of crazy. But like, there is a line that Paul has where he's like, he wasn't wanting the riches, he wasn't wanting the spice, he was wanting the desert power.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's like 80% correct. Like,
still like
I think everyone's still kind of greedy though, like,
Yeah, and
to
like
some degree.
to extent, like his flaw is that like he's taking literally the bull by the horns, right?
Yeah.
Like he's taking this like thing that he knows is going to stab him in the back. He knows there is this problem going to happen, and he's like, you know what? Let's just take it head on.
Yeah,
And that's what kills him in the
is
end.
beautiful because like this bowl metaphor thing that kind of like kept coming up throughout the movie is like one sentence in the book, and he like ran with it, but it actually was like quite poetic. It's just like, hey, here's the red cape, and it's like, yeah, but we're gonna like be better this time. It's like, here's the red cape, and so like it keeps flash forward, like it keeps showing the statue with the matador and the bull, and then it shows the bull's head, and it's like, how did Grandpa die? Well, he killed bulls for sport, but he actually got gored by a bull. And now you're going to the one place where you're definitely going to have a target on your back.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but like, are we though? And it's
Are
like the matador. And it's just like, dude, it's like literally like, it's just like banging this. It's like, don't fall for the same.
Yeah.
And he did, you know, like, it's like, how can we turn down such an amazing offer? It's like, I understand, but just know that like there's now going to be a target on your back, you know? And so now what does Paul do with that when both his grandfather and his father fell for the very thing that killed them?
Yeah.
So what's he going to do? And it kind of creates this new motivation, and it'll be curious to see what seeds that plays into later on. So
along those lines, from what I've read of the book, it kind of spoils a lot of what happens already in the movie, where it's like the Bene Gesserit are like, hey, your dad's gonna die and he's gonna lose this planet, and like that's accepted in like the first book, the 1st chapter, and like it's already accepted that he is this Kazakh Haderach or whatever. Like in like the first chapter is like, he was born in Caladan. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like the book like says this is happening right now, and the movie is like, maybe this is happening.
Yeah.
Like there's more intrigue with the movie, and it's like, oh, we already know that the Doctor is going to betray them in the book, but it doesn't open up like an inner monologue with him where it's like, oh, I feel so bad for doing this. But like in the movie, like I was, shocked. Like, what's going to happen? How is this going to happen? Like, I feel like the movie had a better setup of like how this is going to happen, and I don't know what's happening. Where the book is like, I have a personal intrigue of like, this is happening, and this character thinks this way, and this character thinks this way, but I know what's the end result is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the movie, not to, be oversimplifying, it's made to be a better movie than it is a book.
Yeah.
Like, and it's made for the masses.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the book's like, hey, if you think this is too confusing, you can just put it down. This movie's like, hey, we can't afford to have like 80% of the population just go, no thanks. Like, so we need to make kind of, like, this makes sense. Like they have to do some of the work for you. Whereas the book does not give a shit about you.
Yeah.
The book's just like, hey, guess what? This guy's a god.
Gomja.
What are your thoughts? You're just like, whoa, I didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
Are we sure? think so.
Yeah.
You'll find out. And you're just like, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
This is insane, but no, I'm with you. Okay. So you have high hopes for the franchise.
Yes, I want to see the franchise. I want to see more of it. What I'm concerned about is I've heard so much about Dune. What about the other books? Like, what about the other? Is Dune so great because Dune the book is great, or is the franchise great? Is the series great? You know, like, I don't know what they're gonna do like after Dune. Like, I'm sure there's like a billion other like factions and all this stuff, but like I don't know anything about anything else about this series. I just know like I know the word Dune, but that's it.
It's a weird fan base. I follow the subreddit and like kind of dig in with some of the fans, but like some would say if you read the first book, you're a Dune fan. You did it. Great job. If you want to see Paul's story kind of like come to like fruition and kind of like, hey, I invested in the first book, then read the second. If you read all 6, you really like Dune, but it's not necessary. And then if you read all of his son's works that he like cashes in on after his dad dies, the dad wrote the first 6 and then the son wrote like 13 more. They're like, the rest of the 13 are hot garbage.
Really?
So like there's this weird divide. Like there are different areas of this fan base that would say first 2 books, golden. First 6 books, sure. Anything after that, don't you even dare. You're just trying to piss yourself off.
Really? Because you read the first 2.
That's all I've read. And I've read like the first few chapters of 3. And then I just kind of was like, I'm just going to slow down. Because it's a lot.
Yeah.
Book 2 is a lot easier, but book 1 was like, whoa.
Yeah.
My favorite scene's on the screen right now.
Oh, let's go. They're in a tent. They're in a tent.
No, I have high hopes as well. I think this could branch off. They could do a lot of things, spin-offs, TV shows, all of it. It's just this is just a hard movie, I think, to review because there's just so much going on in it. There's just scenes of, worms
Sandworms
and tripping balls and just crying and sweating. And it's just such a weird book. And I like it. And I love it.
It works so well, though.
It's it's a vibe, I think is the best way to describe it.
This movie isn't what Denis Villeneuve does a great job of. Like this whole like world, there's a scale to this movie. There's like a feeling of this movie, and it just works so well. And we're watching Timothée Chalamet pop off, stabbing dudes. Oh, and there's gonna be a giant sandworm in the background. Oh, it's so good. Well, it was great.
And there's just this like beautiful like so we're watching the future of him like killing a lot of guys with his blue eyes and his dope armor and the worm in the background. There's no shields. Because the thing is, if you have a shield on in the desert, literally worms are like, oh,
attracted to it.
I'm just going to kill you. They go into a frenzy. And so, like, you can see some of the fighting, and then there's shield fighting, and then there's all this other stuff. It's just, what a world. It's just so intriguing that you just want to dive into it more.
I mean, that's literally what I was like. I went home and I listened to the book.
Yeah,
or I
like,
read the book.
All right, guess I'm reading the book now.
Yeah, I was so ready to read the book. I just needed the excuse to be like, I just need to learn more about this world.
Amen.
And I'm ready for it. Hey, there it is. House Atreides.
He's destined with terrible purpose.
I want to see more of that terrible purpose.
You're going to.
Oh, boy.
He's scared. Yeah, I would be too. Oh, boy, I'd be pooping my pants. Anyway.
And that's how we're going to end this podcast.
All right. Well, everybody, we finally have achieved greatness. We made it to Dune. We both loved it. It's great. You should check it out too. Read the book. It's a cool world.
Yeah.
I think we like talking about it, and it kind of goes beyond the movies. It makes you actually want to get into the books and do a lot of stuff. So I don't know how many reviews you've listened to about Dune. Probably a lot, but you've now heard from us, not us. United.
Yes, sir.
Good night, everybody. Boom.
Oh, so easy. You've just listened to Not Us United. You can find us under Nodish United on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Please leave us a review and consider subscribing to our podcast. You can reach out for future podcast topic suggestions at nodishunitedpod@gmail.com.